All Elite reviewing. The only show on YouTube and on Spotify and on every streaming service that we could think of where we talk about All Elite Wrestling and its various shows, including the shows on YouTube like Dynamite and Dark, and of course including Elevation and Dark, and then Dynamite, and then of course upcoming Rampage. I'm Shamik Ghosh,
and I am Josh Starnes.
And this is episode 8. And this week on AEW, when we talk about storylines that are specific to Elevation and Dark, the one thing I really liked this week was, of course, last week I actually lamented that it didn't have the continuation, but they have so much storylines and just really a big roster right now that they can't fit everything into 1 week.
Even with 4 hours of Dark, hours of Dark this week.
That is something I noticed, is that Elevation and Dark, and this is something I noticed. It's one of those quirky things. It was actually pretty much the exact same time this week. It was exactly 8 hours and 57 minutes for each time.
Well, I think they did, as best I can tell, because when they're going into the live shows, they're basically saying this is a 4-hour show. And what they've said they're going to do going forward is we're going to do like an hour of Elevation beforehand, and then we're going to do an hour of Rampage after Dynamite ends. And they're basically setting the 4-hour timeline now, but they aren't recording Rampage yet. So it ended up recording 2, and they had a bunch of Dark left over from Jacksonville, and goodness knows how much Dark they actually have left over from Jacksonville, or if we're going to see Dark from Texas next week. But it looks like they recorded 4 hours, a 2-hour Elevation, and they're going to be doing that for all the road shows until Rampage actually starts, to make sure that all the live shows are always 4 hours wherever they are.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is when I saw the times, I was thinking we should get used to this, because this is probably it's how it's going to be going forward, and which is how when they talk about the whole concept to begin with. That's what made sense to me. You think, well, 2-hour shows, like each one being a 2-hour show, that just makes sense. But sometimes you'd have Elevation be like 45 minutes, and then sometimes it would be like 4 hours. So and that's Dark or Elevation. So this week, when we talk about the storylines that that sometimes they skipped over, the one that I talked about from a couple of weeks ago was the Jorah Joel storyline, which I was very, very into. And to my surprise, I saw him come out there and give a very nice promo in Hindi. It's nice that I even talked to one of my other Indian friends, and he was like, it's pretty cool that, although I can only barely understand what he's saying, I can kind of understand what he's saying because I don't know Hindi probably as well as I should. But it was nice that he actually did the promo in Hindi and everything like that. But the more important thing is that he actually accepted the offer. Is that he joined the Hardy, which I didn't think he was going to do, because how many people are in the Hardy family office already? There's already so many, so I guess what's one more? But when he decided to join, you can obviously see from the get-go that he's playing the reluctant heel bit. And he even said in his promo that I'm just basically doing this to get into the to AEW, to get my foot in the door.
Well, it was like a pure babyface promo. I mean, he basically said I'm doing this for everybody at home to show that it can be done, and I'm following my dreams. I'm going, it was as babyface a promo can get. And then my first thought, well, that was a babyface promo. So unless they don't know what they're doing, he's got to be a babyface, but he's joining a heel outfit. This is not going to go over.
Speaking of heel outfits, it's funny that you use that that phrase, because they actually had him come out, and my friend even asked me, what's with the Bucks jersey? Because what happened is, I don't know if if any of our listeners are big NBA fans, but in this year in the playoffs, the Milwaukee Bucks swept the Miami Heat 4-0 in the playoffs.
And where was Elevation? And Elevation was taking place this year in Miami.
Yes, right, because it was after the Dynamite trip from last week. Remember?
That's right. So cheap heat is the best heat.
Cheap, very cheap heat. Yeah. So, and he had the honest dirty on and everything, and he was, wrestling in it. And every time he took it off, Private Party would make him turn it on, put it back on. Although I did notice during the match that the Private Party has a tendency to sometimes not realize they're heels. Like, they'll do a move and start high-fiving fans and stuff. Yeah. And I'm like, that's not really. But I'm like, they're natural heels.
They are natural babies. They really need to be
natural faces. They're harder to find than natural heels or anything like that. So it's one of those things where it's like, okay, spread your wings, see what's out there, explore yourselves, but then come back to who you really are, which is faces. Yeah. And they fought against Orange Cassidy. And I guess Wheeler Utah is taking the place of Trent in the best friends lineup, which is
Well, you've
what it's-
heard Trent was diagnosed with spinal stenosis and has had to have spine
Nice.
surgery. So
Oh,
he is
no.
going to be on the shelf for
For a
looks like
while.
another 6 months or so.
Jeez.
So,
Yeah, because he just came back from a torn pectoral muscle,
That's
right?
right. It's like he
And then he
just
go right into
came
this.
back like a month ago, and now he's right back out again. And yeah, so they want to keep the best friends. It felt like they wanted to keep the you'd say like, oh my goodness, a wrestling company that looks ahead, because they were definitely looking ahead to what their setup was going to be on Wednesday, and I want to talk about this a bit more when we get to Dynamite. But the way that they are very much on purpose trying to put all of their biggest stars in some way or other on TV every week, even if they're just walking to the ring. So they put him in with best friends so that they can make sure that there's a good rationale for best friends to walk in, specifically Orange Cassidy to walk into the ring on Dynamite so they get that Orange Cassidy pop. But yeah, but it helps that they are best friends are down a guy.
Yeah, and
Wheeler
you know
Yuta.
what you're talking about. It almost seems like it's because they're touring again that they know that us wrestling fans, have been just pent up in our houses, and we're like, we haven't seen these guys. We were supposed to see these guys. Almost everybody who's an actual like attending wrestling fan has had a ticket by now that they got, that
Yep.
they've had to delay. So I think they're like, you guys have been waiting so long. Here you go. Here's even just Orange Cassidy for a second, that type of thing. But even Orange Cassidy, I thought it was hilarious that he did a little the rear hold sequence with George Hole, which I've never seen Cassidy do in AEW yet.
And
So
just
that was
wouldn't-
entertaining. But he just kept switching and switching and switching and switching. That was pretty entertaining. I thought that was pretty good.
I
He
mean,
like
even
did
the
Cassidy
announcers,
while he was in there, So
Yeah.
I was like, that's what you want to see.
even
So-
Paul White was like, this could go on for a while, and another switch, and another switch, and another switch.
Yeah. So I mean, I thought that was a very good match, and I thought they all worked very hard. Definitely, even Wheeler Utah, who was in there. But of course, George didn't get the pin, unfortunately. But we'll see. At least there's a lot of legs with that storyline now. Like he's going to be in Dynamite, like in an actual like talking role anytime now. Just because he's part of the Hardy family.
Seems like if they're putting this much work, and I mean, obviously there will always be we're going to do this and see how they do and see if we can put them on TV. But I'm racking my brains to see if there's anyone that they ever put this kind of work into early on that hasn't panned out. I mean, I'm sure that
at least he didn't get the Joey segments this week, so that whoever put the work into that got a break this week.
But I mean, there haven't been that many. There have been people who come out of dark who've shown up on Dynamite, but there haven't been like probably the biggest one is Powerhouse Hobbs, who's up to the point of cutting promos and doing angles and having matches on television and on pay-per-views. But they haven't had that many people at that level, but they certainly have had people. You've got top flights come up through this, and they talk a little bit. They haven't got to the point where they're getting a lot of mic time, a little bit on dark, but they're still getting there. But I haven't seen anybody who's like failed. I mean, the day will come where they start giving somebody like a little push on dark, and they go, nope, you ain't got it, and they just go home. They're not there yet, so I guess we're gonna have to see what he sees. But I have to imagine if they're putting this much effort into it, they see something, and at some point he's going to. I mean, it was like a year. At least Lee Johnson, who we'll talk about in a bit, spent a year basically in this same spot that George is in right now, and now he's getting to be on Dynamite with Dustin Rhodes, and occasionally doing an angle, and occasionally cutting promos, and getting better and better every day. So, it might take a year, but it seems like they have some ideas.
Yeah, and speaking of effort, you were telling me this privately earlier, but Matt Hardy, right? I mean,
all over the place. And this was like, especially this match, and this is a good match to start with, but it's the intersection of like 5 or 6 different things, because it's Matt Hardy, who wrestled on every show, both Darks and on Dynamite, and featured matches this week, and he cut promos on all of them, leading up to his match with Christian Cage, and talking about how, very realistic. And he had a great promo on Elevation, basically talking about how nobody looked after him. He hurt himself wrestling, and he wrestled he didn't say the specific words, but he basically said, he wrestled for 20 years in WWE and got cut loose with nothing to show for it. And he got hurt in AEW trying to put on a good match. And he's learned the hard lessons that you got to look out for yourself because no one else is going to, and you may not like hearing it, but the truth is the truth. And he's going to.
Not crazy about that catchphrase, honestly.
I think that's a great catchphrase.
Really? I honestly, I just don't get it.
I think that's a great catchphrase.
The thing is the thing. Yeah, that's all right.
But you know what? I noticed.
Like
No, I think it's great. I did notice that when he came out, because obviously the elevation segments were on. We're in Miami in a packed house of 4,000 people. So and Matt Hardy was only on elevation in Miami because they made sure to any big name guys who did not make it onto Dynamite for their first show on the road, they made sure came out to elevation so that everybody in that house got to see somebody. They even had Sting come out on elevation to do a nice little talk to the crowd. And so Matt Hardy got to come out with the whole Hardy family office, all 2,500 of them. And he got a giant pop. As soon as he got a giant pop, and I noticed he worked a delete into his first little talk to the crowd. But that's
like even his promo that he was talking about, like, when he was talking about Christian Cage, because they went back and forth when Dark and Elevation were doing their little setup for the feud for the match on Dynamite. And he was like, when I first came to AEW, I was like, when he first came to AEW, you had Vanguard 1. You heard Damascus. You're not this guy. You can't say that when you first came. You mean when you were first like this money Matt Hardy? That's not the same Matt Hardy.
When that personality of Matt Hardy was in most control.
Mm-hmm, right. It's like Split, but wrestling.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean that's the gimmick. And he can even do it in water on command.
There you go. I do miss. Oh, Neo. I guess Neo 1 is like the new one, but I do miss his little drone.
I'm sure at some point Goofy Matt, now that fans are back.
I don't know. He's employing so many people. He's going to put all of them out of a job. I
don't know if he's going to stay Big Money Matt forever, but it is a good. I like it. It's a good gimmick. I really like that. I really like that. He times it just right that it fits with his point. And really, listening to that promo, you're like, he's got a point. Nothing, like it's the best heel promo. Is like nothing he said was a lie. So it's kind of like that Ethan Page promo from last week about why he did it for Darby Allin. Like technically, nothing he said was untrue. So how do you combat that? But he worked hard, and this is a man who just had his 4th baby 2 days ago.
Right, that's right. And they're all under 6, right?
Yeah,
that's a busy dude.
Cameron, North Carolina. But,
they're all named Cameron. Like George Foreman and his kids.
He's here in Texas, but he's not letting up. He's not taking his foot off the gas for 1 second, including having his own matches and getting toweled off when needed to be. He's putting George Ole through the ringer. He's gonna make him earn his keep. So there's only, as I see it, there's only 2 possible outcomes from this story. Either number 1, George Ole turns heel like a la Private Party and buys full into it, or number 2, he can't put up with it. He comes to a point where he can't put up with it anymore, and he has a physical altercation and split from the Hardy family office and becomes a full-on babyface on his own right. I'm assuming.
I guess it's equally plausible that you get niche, but I would prefer that I guess what the traditional storyline would be right now. It's like this reluctant heel until he gets famous enough or until he can break away, that type of thing.
I assume it's the second one
because if you do the heel one, you're doing the Young Bucks storyline from earlier,
or the private party.
They lead into being heels.
Yeah, or the Private Party story. I mean, that's basically what they did with Private Party.
Good heels.
They're not good heels.
Which is good. That's a good quality to have in a person, but still.
And though we haven't seen enough of him on TV, I don't get the feeling yet that George Ole could be a good heel. He also seems more like a natural baby face, but we haven't seen much of him. That's just the feeling I get so far.
Yeah, maybe watch him do a dickish thing. Watch him be like QT Marshall.
Yeah, it was hard.
Drink on. I was like, why are you still on TV? Your feud's over, dude.
That feud's never over. Never.
He was just talking, pulling Tony Schiavone. I'm like, okay, dude. Like, no one's even fighting you. Cody moved on to a much better feud that already than whatever he and QT could do. So yeah.
But we'll get to that. That's okay. The QT stuff had to happen, so we get to this stuff. But there was there were quite a few.
Seidels are on TV this week too. Jeez,
well, he'll be back. He wasn't on Dark, but he'll be back. There was a lot of other stuff said. That was the biggest thing as far as sheer amount of screen time. And the other thing, obviously, it's set up is that both of those it gave a big win to Wheeler Yuta, who also had a big win last week over Ryan Nemeth. and they gave several big wins in a row on Dart to Wheeler Yuta, obviously with a purpose, because he was going to be wrestling on Dynamite on Wednesday against Sammy Guevara in a singles match. They wanted to make sure that that they could package him having wins over AEW wrestlers and show that he was someone that you couldn't just expect to roll over. That anything could happen. So
he's good. I mean,
he's
he's good. But I'm just surprised that we just heard of him maybe 3 weeks ago, and all of a sudden, like, he just froze to this spot. Well,
I think that they
Captain
brought
Sean
him
Dean,
in.
so like losing to everybody, like
Poor Captain Sean Dean. He occasionally gets a spot, but nothing really happens. But you know what? It was like that with Griff Garrison and Lee Johnson for a long time too. But Wheeler Yuta's in a different space, because like Sean Dean basically came right out of wrestling school and into doing dark matches.
Yeah, Utah has some cred.
Utah has been around for the indie scene for many, many, many years. He has a lot of. He's not a newbie. He has a lot of ring time.
I can tell by his ring manner, like like he's been there.
I first saw him in MLW in like 2018. So I've seen his matches for a while, and he's wrestling with New Japan. He's done some Impact matches this year, and he's wrestling with New Japan on the.
I'd say is he like Japanese American or something? Because like Utah is something a very like Japanese name.
I can't. It's something Asian. I'm not sure the exact country, but I wouldn't be surprised if it is Japan. But he's on the U.S. New Japan. He's a tag team with Fred Yehai on New Japan Strong, and so he's working in a lot of different places. He does he's big on the California independent scene, so he's been around for a while. So it's not like
just some random schmo. Yeah,
no, it's like when like Blade and Butcher and Blade first showed up, and they're just
or like Rocky Romero when he showed up for like
right into like main event stuff. It was like, no, this is a guy that, especially AEW fans, there are probably at this point going to be quite a few AEW fans who haven't heard of him, but there will be a large number who have, because he's been around, and AEW fans pay attention, especially to indie stuff. I mean, he had a WWE tryout.
You're very smart.
So he's
very good at that.
But they had a lot of stuff with him, and then they had quite a few dark specific storylines you had to pay attention to, and some more that are going to lead, that it looks like are going to lead into Dynamite material. But Big Swole, who we were just talking about,
we haven't seen her on TV in a bit.
Well, we were just saying how we hadn't seen her on TV at all.
Kylie King is off fighting faces all the time now.
I know. First she had a warm up with Riho and lost to Riho, and then this week she had a warm up with Yuka Sakazaki. Obviously giving her some ring time before her Dynamite match, and she lost there too. And you know what? But the other thing I couldn't help but thinking, and because I thought about it during the Thunder Rosa match, who this is her first time back, and I was thinking about it with Kylan King. You got to think about how much the AEW roster has changed since the pandemic. And
oh my gosh, yeah.
It's probably especially on the dark shows that are recording, that are elevation shows that are recording with Dynamite. You have got people who probably they had done their 4th or 5th match ever the first time they got brought in for dark a year and a half ago, and now they are coming. Like Kylie King just wrestled in front of 4,000 people. She is probably like a year and a half out of wrestling school. It's probably a little bit longer than that, but she was very, very fresh and very green. And when they brought her in last year to start, and now she's at the point where like, all right, we'll put you out on, I mean, it's going to be on dark, but we're going to put you on in front of 4. And now she's having to walk out.
It's like going to wrestling boarding school or like wrestling academy.
I mean, you got like Thunder Rosa, who, she was on Lucha Underground, but that didn't ever have like large, giant local audiences. And then she's been on the indies quite a bit. And, she was on NWA Power, but that only ever had about 400 people in the room at a time. So she was coming out and she got a giant pop. You could really tell who was really over. And I was measuring it on both Elevation and Dynamite. Thunder Rosa got a giant pop when she came
also
out.
First one out usually gets a big pop though.
Yeah, but also it's Thunder Rosa. I think she would have even if she wasn't, because Darby got a giant pop too, and he was last, but he's Darby. Matt Hardy got a giant pop. Rio got a giant pop. The Acclaimed got a giant pop. You can tell they are way over. And I hate to tell you, Varsity Blondes got a pretty good size. It wasn't an Acclaim size pop, but they definitely wore way more cheered than the Gun Club.
The Eiffel Tower 2 wheel.
But
why would I even cheer for these guys? They already just said that. You guys are done already.
That was a great line. I should have gone back and beat them up. It's still, I was wondering if once they're back in a crowd of 4,000 people, where they were gonna let him just keep being himself. And
yeah, because
they
on
are.
Dark, they didn't go. For once, didn't go sexual. They went really political. They were talking about WMDs with the.
I thought that, you know what? I laughed at that harder than I did at the Eiffel Tower joke. He's like, "Why are you guys even in here? You should stay. Did you find it? Did you find them? Where are they? Where are they?"
I like that he kept asking.
And he just kept. Oh, that was great. I mean, the Acclaimed and especially Max Caster are such natural heels that they can't ever be baby faces, but they're so over that they're almost like, it's like Britt Baker. They're over like baby faces, even though they're assholes. But
yeah,
what can you do? But Kylan King.
Well, he did make fun of Miami, and at least he's still doing that. I feel
So,
I get the feeling Britt's kind of going more face anti-hero type
well, I want
stuff.
to talk about that a bit when we get into Dynamite. I know we got to rush through these, but I did say I was really impressed with that Kylan King match. That for someone who's come out and wrestling in front of 4,000 people for the first time, she looked really composed. The faces, the facial expressions, the selling, everything looked like TV ready. And then I was like, these are people.
And that was against Yuka, right?
Against Yuka.
Yuka Sakazaki. I'm not a big Yuka Sakazaki fan.
I really like
I'm like, you're gonna look like Sabu and not like destroy anything, like at least her own body. Like, come on, that's weird.
She does throw herself around quite a bit. It's just she doesn't.
Yeah, but I'm not saying she's bad. But out of all the Japanese lady wrestlers they've had, maybe I put her on the same level as who's the hardhead girl. Like she's around that level. But yeah,
she's way better than.
But I like Rio.
She's way better. No, Yuka Sakazaki is much better worker than Maki Ito.
Okay, Maki Ito. Yeah, that was it. Yeah.
But
that was fun.
Yeah, I thought that was. I was like, I just was marveling, like all these people who were having matches in a full stadium for the first time or a year out of wrestling school. It's crazy, and yet that's how much their roster has changed. But everybody was totally up to it. I'd be freaking out if I was in that position. But but
so is the Swole Kylan King thing, like, is that still a group?
I don't know, because they haven't been coming
Red
out
Velvet, because
together.
they've all been doing matches.
They all did and all three of them had single matches, and they didn't come out together. And Kylan King has been wrestling against baby faces. So I don't know, but it is not usual for if this was WWE, I'd say they're probably broken up. But it's not usual for AEW to just drop something with no explanation. They keep track of continuity and they tie up storylines. So I'm going to say, as far as I can tell right now, they are. And you had both a Swole and a Diamante match. You both got promos, and Diamante got a good one on Dark, which is good to see. They haven't forgotten about her. Diamante called out Swole, who answered back in time. So it seems like they're starting a program that it could stay on Dark. It could go to Dynamite. I expect right now it's going to stay on Dark just because this show, there's so many people. But so they started out a program that's going to be on Dark, and I would expect at some level that if Swole's going to the ring for a call out on Diamante, she should have her crew with her. But we shall see.
At least you had to do finisher. I never liked her old finisher all that much.
I'm sure she's still got it, but I like that. I like that they've been giving people. We talked about that with Penelope before. They've been doing that a lot. Red Velvet got a good pop when she came out for her match in Elevation, so she's getting over. Tay Conti got a giant pop, which she should. And
of course,
Hikaru Shida had Julia Hart had her best ever match with Hikaru Shida. She looked really good. I assume most of that was Shida kind of leading her through it, but that was a good match. I was really impressed.
Yeah, at least Julia could hang, right? So that's the thing. Yeah. She didn't drag Shida down or anything like that.
Yeah, a lot of people calling out. So obviously there was a 4-man tag match with the Acclaimed Chaos Project versus Gun Club and Varsity Blondes, and Varsity Blondes pulled out the win when my man Brian Pillman Jr. pinned Dr. Luther, and exactly how it should have gone down. And Varsity Blondes, that act is over. I know.
I mean, okay.
I know it eats at your soul.
Like you're talking about call outs, so it seems like this week was about call outs for everybody. So after that match, the Acclaim called out Varsity Blondes, and I guess that's going to be a feud now.
Yeah,
so
and that's a TV worthy feud, and they basically came out and said,
and
that's the other thing.
Firmly on one side, and on the other. So,
and they flat out came out and said, and I really like, I really like this. And Acclaim came out and had 2 matches on both Darks with 2 great Max Caster raps in front of them. And I cannot wait for a Max Caster rap in front of a giant, and his rap on Elevation got a big pop. I can't wait for that on the Dynamite. People will go crazy for it. But they came out and said, like, you're the number one ranked tag team. We're the number 2 ranked tag team. We want a tag title shot. We got to go through you because wins
which that's
and
supposed to happen
losses-
very recently because I thought
It's
when I
been
blinked
building
like
up.
last week, I thought they were 2 and that the Blondes were 3.
No, Blondes have been 2 for a bit.
Okay.
Pentagon and Eddie were number 1, and now they dropped several spots after they
Right.
lost to the Young Bucks, so everybody else got elevated. Yeah, so and it works as a storyline because in AEW, wins and losses matter, and the rankings matter. And people complain about it all the time and complain about, everybody gets all their wins on Dark, so if it's not on TV, it doesn't count. It counts. And this is going to lead to a feud, probably a good feud, which is exactly the feud these 2 teams should be having, and probably on Dynamite, because that is a Dynamite match, are those 2 teams against each other.
Except that when you look at how they do the ranking, sometimes you get the feeling there's this college football-ish strength of schedule thing going behind it.
Well, they
like
flat
that.
out said that.
You know?
Like Cody Rhodes.
It's not just a straight numbers game.
No.
Yeah.
Cody Rhodes flat out said it in their first episode of Dynamite that it is quality of win. You get pushed higher if you beat somebody who's way above you than if you beat somebody under you.
Yeah. No cake schedule teams like all college football does, like in all the first month of college football season. Yeah, nothing like that. Okay.
You can build up a bunch of wins. It's like UFC. You can build up.
You can't beat up Chandler Hopkins 5 times in a row in the rankings.
No, it's fun for us to watch, especially when he gets body slammed to death.
Please no.
But it's not
fuck you, Sadiq.
No, but they did it with Britt Baker. She worked her way up on Dark, getting her rankings up, but then she had to beat some people who were tough. But it's like,
and that was a storyline.
Yeah. But you can beat all the prelim guys you want to beat. But if you get a title shot, eventually you have to get one of those top 10 guys. And those guys are a lot harder than the prelim guys. And that's the way it should be. And the other bit that leads us right into Dynamite was in between all these, we also had a magnificent promo by Miro, who might be the best taped promo in AEW. And I never really saw any of his WWE stuff.
His best taped promo.
Yeah.
Not the best. I would say Eddie Kingston's right there.
Yeah. I like Miro. I can see that, and it's probably accept the taste. I like this version of Miro promos better than
it's great.
I don't know what his stuff in WWE was like if it was ever this good.
I get the feeling he's going to be like the king of Rampage. Like they're going to show him a lot of it, right? Because they're putting him on a lot of the marketing material for Rampage.
Well, he's the other title holder, so it's a good place to put the other title holders on the other show.
I missed him. He hasn't been on TV like actually doing matches in a bit. So
he had the Brian Pillman match like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, but in this industry, and he's a title holder,
I am sure he'll be back. I mean, they made sure he had a promo on Dynamite. So he did a promo on Dark, letting everyone know that he is the king. No one will beat him, and talking more about his role as the Redeemer. That
he
didn't like his original self. Yeah, I'm assuming his hot wife who can do the splits. And I'm assuming that she will have to show, as much as he talks about her, I'm assuming she has to show up on the show at some point. I mean, it's you can't say that so much. And
it's a thing now. It's
a thing now. But he was talking. He started a promo showing about how he learned to put away the version of himself he didn't like and redeem himself and became God's favorite champion. And he was going to show that by having a belt that was God's favorite belt. And then on Dynamite, he did indeed have another promo because Dynamite's making sure all their top guys are getting TV time. And so even if they don't have a match. So Miro had a promo on Dynamite and made sure to show off the new design of the TNT title belt, which is the colors of the Bulgarian flag, all white with a green stripe for the champion. And then I'm assuming it matches with the red trunks he wears, which is because the Bulgarian flag is white, green, and red, or green, white, and red.
Is this going to be like a WWE belt where they just everybody has their own version of the belts at some point?
It's what it's turned into.
The spinner belt.
I don't. They do not have a spinner, but they don't change it that much. But and they haven't gone like too crazy. But and I don't know if this was their original plan, but it's definitely turned out that way because you had the Cody belt, which was first red and silver, and then red and gold, and then you had. But then that belt dude's getting good business out of all this. Well, the version that Brody Lee had was also the Cody,
the red one,
the red and gold one, And then after he passed, they gave that to -1 and introduced the black and gold one, which was just happened to be the one that Darby Allin had the whole time. And now Miro has changed it to the white and silver and green one.
So it's kind of like everybody's doing their own version of the belt.
It seems like it.
Yeah, right. Might be a coincidence, but it really does seem like that way.
Yeah, well, I mean, they didn't change the championship belt, the WWE.
It's good for merchandising, right?
Yeah.
Sell.
Well, they haven't made a replica TNT belt yet, but they should. I'm assuming they will. They've got the replica world title one, so they should make the replica other ones.
Kenny's like it's busy holding all those other belts.
But that brings us into Dynamite and the other part of who was over and who was not. And they filled this show to the brim. I thought this was a great episode.
It was an awesome show, and it was a lot of the matches were so like old school wrestling.
Yes,
That's what that thing.
So.
Not a lot of like there was so much. And we'll get into this match by match, but it just had a really good. I mean, it felt like I was watching a show basically out of the mid 2000s, maybe, or like the early 2000s, like that type of thing. Yeah,
it's a mixture of stuff that they've built. I mean, they've been building that Darby at Ethan Page match for like 2 months now. So stuff they've been really building to, but then a bunch and a few others. They've been building that Matt Hardy Christian Cage match for a while, and the Brian Cage Starks match. So
it was like a pay-per-view type of thing. A lot of storyline climaxes were in the show.
They really did.
So, yeah.
But without any of the stuff that's because the main events for the last several weeks have revolved one way or another around either Kenny Omega or the Young Bucks. So we've been getting very much many heel Kenny Omega matches or heel Young Bucks matches, which are fun but are very specific flavor. And it seemed like we got a bunch of those in a row, whereas this didn't have any of those. I mean, there was a very, very big segment with the Young Bucks and Kenny, but no matches from them. And so
where Don came out to incredible heat. Oh my god!
Oh, he's gonna get heat everywhere.
I'm like, that's what I was telling my friend. I was like, looking forward to the Don the Heat World Tour. Like that's one thing where he can't even talk. Is getting booed so much.
He may be the best heel in the business.
I think so. I mean, yeah.
I mean, he's probably more hated than MJF among AEW.
I would say so.
Right
yeah.
Now.
And you love to hate him. Like MJF, you kind of like him, even though he's a dick. Like, you're like, because he's that you respect that he's so good at what he does. But the smarminess of Don Callis is just top notch.
It will be interesting to see. So obviously, this weekend is, through as we take a quick peek through the Forbidden Door before we go back to Dynamite. This weekend is Slammiversary, Impact's #1 wrestling show, the Impact version of WrestleMania.
The one that Don was fired from. Yeah.
The one that Don was fired from as an executive producer, but he's still there as Kenny's manager. So Kenny Omega it's going to be Kenny Omega's second. You talk about Herculean, the labors of Jericho. You got the labors of Kenny Omega this summer. He already had to defend the title at Double or Nothing and against Pac and Orange Cassidy. Now he has to defend the Impact title at Slammiversary against Sami Callihan, and then he's got to defend the AAA title next month against Andrade. So we've got a long month. So this Saturday is going to be Slammiversary. Up until now, Impact has been entirely empty building wrestling. But Slammiversary is going to have live fans. It's not going to be a whole lot. I think it's going to be like 500 people. But this will be the first one of these since Kenny Omega's been going there that's going to have live fans at. So I'm very curious to see what the crowd reaction to Don Callis during the main event is, and if he gets the same kind of
Mr. 500 loud boos is what you're going to hear.
Probably, or worse, or it'll be another version of Double or Nothing where everyone was yelling "Fuck you, Don."
Fuck you, Don.
Like
yeah, probably.
Minutes.
It's my anniversary. You paid good money to say that, right? So there you go.
Pretty much. Yeah. But yeah, this was a great episode. They had just about every top star on it in one way or another, starting off with Jon Moxley with the help of Eddie Kingston versus Machine Gun Carl Anderson for the IWGP US Heavyweight Championship title. So
when I talked about old school feel to the show, I mean, this was a very good way to set the tone for that.
This was like a 90s style match, especially with Carl Anderson trying.
I was very impressed with Carl Anderson. I haven't seen him too much, but I was like, all right, like it was a very good, a very physical, brawling type of match, but brawling, but not like, a street fight, brawling, but still technical. So that's what I liked about it. He's a
really good wrestler that most people haven't gotten to see in the US, haven't gotten to see him be a really good wrestler because most of his best stuff has been traditionally in Japan, and he never really got to be his Japanese style self when he was in WWE because WWE has its own way of working and they just weren't going to let him have those kinds of matches. This was a really, really great way to open this. Moxley was way over and they had a great match. I thought maybe a little bit of ring rust, but not too much. Like there were one or two spots that looked like they got missed. Moxley was supposed to catch Anderson trying to do a top rope gum stun, and is more like fell through his arms and landed on the floor, and they transitioned real fast to the paradigm shift. But that's fine. These things happen.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, whenever you perform, as long as you just don't act like you fucked up, and just keep going. And you think most people, it's only nerds like us that notice.
There was a spot I had seen. There was a spot just like that on Elevation in the Jungle Boy Lee Johnson match. Jungle Boy bounced off the ropes, ran all the way across the ring, did a fly over the ropes into a Hurricane Rana off the apron onto the floor. But what actually happened was he got his legs all the way around Lee Johnson, and then his legs kind of came off Lee Johnson. And Lee Johnson made sure to keep his forward momentum going, but he didn't like flip all the way over like you do a Hurricane Rana. He just kind of came in and landed himself on his forearms. But that was still an amazing spot. That was a TV show quality spot, and they did that on that was a pay-per-view quality spot, and they did that on Dark. That was great. That's why you got to watch Dark, people. You're gonna miss out on some great stuff.
Yeah, I mean, because like we've been saying week after week, and because it's really how AEW does things. They build up these characters through these YouTube shows, and that's why you care about them when they get to the main show.
Yeah.
So that's why, I mean, it's just like anything. Just like, for example, when I first discovered, hey, betting on basketball is pretty cool because I'm actually a little bit more emotionally invested than I ever was before. It's the same thing with wrestling this type of way, where if you're more emotionally invested in the characters, you're the bigger payoff.
Well, it's like when you've only been watching Dynamite. Whenever some of these YouTube guys comes in, so like Lee Johnson gets to come and do his first match, everybody's going, "Who are you?" And the announcers are having to spend a bunch of time explaining he came out of Cody school and this or that. Whereas if you've been watching Dark since the beginning, you're like, "Oh, Lee Johnson is getting his first TV match. Wow, this is a big deal."
But then we're the assholes that are like, "Oh, you guys watch your 2 YouTube shows? What's wrong with you?" That's what I don't get. How am I the asshole?
Because you are.
Yeah,
anyway,
well, you are what you eat. that wasn't right.
I think you might want to rethink that one.
Yeah.
But we followed this up with the long-awaited. We talk about like the number of storylines that they actually paid off. They paid off a bunch because now we get finally Ricky Starks cleared for action after breaking his neck back in April. He's been out on the shelf for 4 months, but he's back in time to compete with Brian Cage for the FTW.
Man, Starks was more over than Cage was.
He was way over. He had
yeah.
And this is somebody who hasn't been on TV for 4 months. He came out and people went crazy.
Oh, I know he's been doing a lot of indie stuff, like in New Orleans and in Texas, like in Louisiana and Texas. So I think like the crowd might have been a little bit more familiar with him, but I don't know. I mean, I'm a big Brian Cage fan too. That's the thing, but I wasn't prepared to hear how much more over Starks was than Cage.
I mean, you knew coming into this that Starks had to win because the story they
of course, that's the storyline. Yeah,
is that Brian Cage was going to leave Team Taz. The Team Taz was going to turn on him, and he was going to leave. So
it's basically what the Joy Joel storyline is going to turn into at some point.
Yes, at some point, it's exactly what it is. You can see it coming. And this is what we talk about, like AEW. Yeah, every so often they swerve you, but mostly they do what you expect they're going to do because to do anything else would be stupid. And they did
if it works, it works. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Right?
But yeah, Ricky Starks is also a great natural heel. And when I first ever saw him, he was a babyface.
Yeah, what did you tell me? Like most of his earlier work in NWA was like as a babyface.
He was a babyface the whole time, and he was fine. But he is much better as a heel. He is just
he does the faces and everything. Even though to me he's like the Rock Starks sometimes, but still, that's not a bad thing. That's a very good comparison. So
they had a good match. He got Brian Cage up for a last ride.
I was
really impressed.
The sit out powerbomb. That was amazing. I was like, I can't believe he did that.
Brian Cage is what, 265, 250?
Yeah,
I mean. Ricky
Starks was like maybe like 2/3 of him, basically. Yeah,
it was like 200 pounds, something like that. I mean. That took some strength. There were a couple of those in this, we talked about
Ethan Page, and very clever finishing sequence because, and in the finishing sequence, so you saw what happened, right, in that match where
it was a little confusing.
He turns. So what happens? He turns to or who's he fighting? Starks turns to get the title, and Hobbs is like, "No, you're not getting the title."
Right.
And then Starks is confused, of course, as he should be. But and then even I made a note. I was like, "Well, I guess they can cheat against other people, but not against each other."
That's what I was like. Is that what the story you're telling? I didn't get it.
I got it. I looked back and rewound it, and that's why this is how I got it. So what happens at the first? So that happens, and then Hook distracts, Hook distracts Brian Cage, and then Hook distracts the referee, and then Hobbs comes up and knocks him out, right? And then that's when Starks hits the pin and Starks his FTW title. So what happened is during the first sequence, the ref was looking at them.
That is what I have heard, that he did it in order to keep,
because the ref was looking, and I wasn't staring straight at them.
Disqualified.
He was staring straight at them when they were doing the belt thing.
And
but
if
then
that
when
is
the
true,
attention was diverted, that's when he did it.
That would be the first time in the history of AEW anyone has cared that the ref was looking at them before they cheated.
Right? I mean, it makes all the sense as it should, but that would be the first time where like if that logic came into play.
Yeah. I'm wondering if they planned it that way or if that was Hobbs going, no, you can't do it yet. The ref's looking at you. And he's like, no, we got to do it the right way. I don't know.
That's what I'm saying. He's going like, no, the ref's like right there. Like, well, let's wait until he's distracted and do it.
I get more respect for Will Hobbs every day. I think he's.
Oh yeah, no. I hope that he ends up being like the flower that blooms through the storyline, basically.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if he gets to take that spot. If he keeps getting a lot of promo time when Ricky Starks is back, because obviously Starks.
If they do Cage Hobbs matches, I mean, those are potential to be pretty good.
Yeah, they should be. If it's like Brian Cage, now it's Brian Cage feuds against Team Taz, which seems like where the story should go. It gives him something to do without having to bounce off of all the main eventers for a while.
We have this one person taking on an entire stable thing going on with, like, I guess those the cages going on, and then the 5 labors of Jericho. That's also what's going on there.
And Frankie Kazarian, the elite hunter.
There you go. Yeah, it's like the one against many theme.
That's
George
right.
Joel's going to be there pretty soon. So there you go.
Maybe that's how you end the Hardy family office. George Joel takes the Hardy family office apart one day. And everybody gives up and goes away. I don't know.
Moves it to Mumbai.
Maybe. Only if they start
not these conditions.
So then this led us up to, and it was nice the way they kept going from developing something to ending something, And so we came to like a really good conclusion on the Brian Cage breakup, although I'm sure, like you said, they're going to continue. I mean, the logical thing is to continue with Brian Cage against Team Taz, so we'll see where that goes. And this goes right into developing the next hot program, which is, this should be leading to an all-out match. It should be, if they're smart. Cody Rhodes came out to call out Malachi Black for viciously attacking Arn Anderson last week, and we got a nice little video screen promo from Malachi explaining, and I thought, oh, they just can do it as a video.
It's an old yeller about a horse, basically.
Yeah, basically, had to put down a horse because the horse didn't want to race anymore. And I was like, okay, this is fine, but I hope it's not just a video thing. This is kind of like the Andrade route. And the next thing you know, the lights go out, they come back on.
I like when he was like,
in the ring,
say that, and then he came down,
and they start fighting. And some people say it's on the nose. I think it's perfect the way they had Cody with his blonde hair, all white suit, Malachi Black, and
they've only had 2 interactions so far. It's already worlds better than anything the Nightmare Family had going on with the factory.
It really says a lot about I always said you were way too harsh on QT and the Nightmare Factory, that I enjoyed it, but this is the gap.
Because even look at Cody. This was a different Cody than you saw during the Cody QT feud.
No, because he was always like, he never really took QT seriously until I guess the strap match. But even then, it was like, it was to quote.
And the intensity's already there.
No, like to quote Voices of Wrestling about, or paraphrase him about something else, like the quality difference between the Cody Malachi Black feud and the Cody QT feud is basically infinite.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at. So I'm glad to say I'm not the only one out there.
No,
I'm really looking forward to seeing where this one goes, even though we know it's going to lead up to a match between the two.
I mean,
but they're already playing it very, very well. It's still a classic thing, bringing the old guy and having it beat up, and then but like the intensity just really works, and the way they're delivering the lines and everything, it really is working for me.
It could be just a matter of, I think maybe it is just a matter of synchronicity, because they can't do all of the Nightmare Family stuff I think they want to do, because Anthony Gogo had to go back to England for more eye surgery, and he's on the shelf for at least a couple of months while he heals up. And then Aleister Black coming in just got available like literally a week ago. He got
this is like a timing thing.
So it was just like, all right, he's here. We don't have him. We have him. Let's do this. And it just clicks. You don't know it's going to click, but you roll with the punches, and it comes out something even better than what you thought it was going to be.
Right.
And you know what? and I think it's worth it. I think this should be leading up to an all-out match. Maybe they'll do it sooner because they're really trying to push big TV matches, but this should be an all-out match, and Malachi Black should win. And the tea leaves suggest that he probably will because Cody Rhodes' reality TV show, his Go Big show, got picked
That's
up.
right.
For
Yeah.
the second season, and he's going to have to
Being
leave
right off. Yeah.
in like August or September to go and film.
Like
another
Jade
season
Cargill.
of that.
I'm pretty sure that's a write off too, isn't it?
I don't know. Is she going off to go do something?
So the Jade Cargill promo this week, right? That was on, I think, Dynamite, from what I remember, was that she and her lawyer were talking about how she was going to be in Hollywood for a while, testing out being a Hollywood star and everything, and that she still loved wrestling and everything, but she was going to really go into the Hollywood entire thing there. Which I'm like, this sounds like you're just writing her off TV.
It sounds like it, but it could.
That doesn't sound like a storyline.
Because they definitely are trying really, because I mean, it's not an accident that they had they had 4 women on TV, 5 women on TV, 3 different.
Yeah, I don't think they have anything for her right now,
and
right?
Hers is one of them. Well, it's because she's a heel, and they can't have her going up against Britt Baker because they don't want her to lose, and they can't have Britt Baker lose, and they can't have her wrestle Red Velvet infinitely. But they have, and we've been talking about. I was talking about this with them bringing up Penelope Ford because they need more heel women, but they have a bunch of like babyface women, but it may not necessarily. They probably don't want her to beat Sheeta, although I expect at some point she will. But you don't want her beating Thunder Rosa because you're holding.
But yet they're kind of turning Callie King heel. So
right. Do you want her beating Tay Conti when Tay Conti's is obviously very over? So you kind of got to build, like, she needs to wrestle somebody, but beyond just nobodies. But who are they going to be?
Kind of like the MJF program, almost a little bit.
Yeah. So, but I don't think they're writing her off. I mean, they're obviously trying to keep her on. I mean, they had 3 women segments: a Britt Baker segment, the Yuka Sakazaki Penelope Ford match, and a Jade Cargill segment. So if you rate to be one of the few women's segments, they obviously want you to be a big giant star, and they want to keep pushing you. So I suspect we'll continue to see vignettes from her. Just maybe not.
Oh yeah, sure, but it doesn't sound like she's wrestling anytime soon.
I would guess maybe not until Rampage, when they have more time for women. So I don't
sure,
know.
like in a month. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that seems like a very convenient time to take off this a month before Rampage goes off.
And they're
and another thing I was talking about earlier about call outs being a huge thing this week, about people just calling each other out. Andrade called out the Death Triangle.
That I'm so looking forward to. Any one of those matches. Andrade versus Phoenix, Andrade versus Pentagon, Andrade versus Pac. Any one of those is going to be amazing.
Right. That's what I was excited about. Like, the wrestling nerd in me is like, yes, these are going to be some good ass matches right now.
That I'm looking for. I mean, I know the Matt Sydal one could have gone better, but still, I'm excited for this. As soon as he got out,
you know what? Just go ahead and just blame it on Matt Sydal. I'm fine with that.
As soon as he said,
may or may not be true, but we can do it. I'm not crying against it.
As soon as he said, "What is this death triangle?" I was all for it. That also shows you who did they put on this show? All big stars they want to push. Andrade. They made sure they had a couple minutes with Andrade. They also made sure they had a couple of minutes with QT in the Nightmare Factory. Pouring
for some reason
protein shake on Tony Schiavone's head. So
yeah, because no one's ever done that. No one's picked on Tony on this show ever. He's not a popular whipping boy at all.
Hey, worked for Britt Baker, got her over.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah.
Well, you know what? They were in Cedar Park, Texas, just outside of Austin for this episode. It was in this exact same arena in February of 2019, and like the second to last live episode before the pandemic era, where she went full heel. That's where she came out and gave her infamous Whataburger promo. That got like major heat. And, before I was thinking, because Britt Baker came out to basically do a babyface promo. She came out to a babyface pop to give a babyface promo for her match against Nyla Rose next week for the championship. And I was thinking, when she came out before the last time they were here, people were talking about how they'd spent, 6 or 7 months trying to get her over as the face of the women's division. And she'd been completely supplanted by Riho. She hadn't really clicked. Her matches were only okay. And she was spending most of her time on dark and on prelim matches and was barely on TV.
She was kind of bland as a babyface, honestly.
Very bland. And then she turned heel on the Rock and Rager cruise and then cemented it in Cedar Park. And now her triumphant return to Cedar Park, and she is the biggest women's star in AEW by a mile.
The most cheered women's wrestler. If you can say face or heel or what, but she's the most cheered.
By far. I mean, she got cheered like a babyface. And she's up there with among the most cheered people I mean, she has become that star that they were trying to make. How much has this company changed since the pandemic? Britt Baker is now a giant star. Darby
Right.
Allin is now a giant star. Jungle Boy is now a giant star.
Mm-hmm.
Can carry matches on their own without having to have like another legend next to them. And
I mean, they brought in new people for sure. That's added to the flavor. But you're right. At least the homegrown people have gotten a chance to build themselves up. You know.
And now they've got all these new people like Lee Johnson and Kylan Kingdom come in and do a match in front of 4,000 people without breaking a sweat. And,
yeah.
The other thing I thought.
Well, then it depends on how many more people WWE start releasing.
That too.
You know?
Well, they've already in like 1-2 weeks made Malachi Black more interesting than he ever was to me on WWE. I never, and I don't watch the television, so there may have been stuff that I missed. There's no way on earth I'm sitting through Raw and SmackDown. It's just not happening. But maybe there was stuff on those shows that I missed that made him seem more full formed. But at least to the bits I've seen on the pay-per-view, he was a guy. He was like a good wrestler, but he was just a guy. And he's already a character and a persona who I want to see have a match with Cody Rhodes, and I want to see the outcome of that match. And I never felt that way about him.
And it feels good to care about Cody again. Honestly, I was like, oh, I should see it. Like, because I don't hate Cody. I was just hated every program he was in, basically, that for the last couple of feuds.
The other thing I thought when Britt came out was that, I mean, she got a baby face welcome. And I think that she's going to get that everywhere she goes because she's so
the anti-hero. That's what I'm saying. She's going to say like weird, randomly dickish things kind of, and then but like still like be.
Well, it just seems like at some point
lean into being a heel, like the young Bucks.
People love her so much. At some point, they got to turn her baby face. I mean,
right.
She is a really good heel. She is a better heel than she is a face. But people love her too much for her to be.
Make her like a rock stock heel, like a rock. Still make fun of still make fun of the people. Like not the nicest person in the world, but not an asshole. Like that type of thing.
But fighting for the people, something like that. Because eventually it's going to get to the point where she says, "I am a role model," and everyone's going to say, "Like, yes, you are a role model," and it won't be being an asshole anymore. But and in theory, I mean, obviously the big match for her is her versus Thunder Rosa. It's just, and that's obviously a pay-per-view match. It's just a question of what pay-per-view are they holding that off for? Is it All Out? Is it Full Gear? Like, how long do we got to wait? Because it feels like you got to wait that long before they can even contemplate a face turn. But after that, the other big match I can think of for her is the Jade Cargill match. But that means that she has to be the baby face for that.
Which I could see that happening. For sure.
In fact, I'm going to say it now, and I want us to remember it when December rolls around. Because what I want to do is I want one of our shows to be 2022 predictions, and we're going to do our prediction show. Because there's like a couple of things that I'm going to lay them out now, just so I can remember them.
You think Britt versus Jade is going to be something that you definitely think?
Britt versus Jade with Britt as the baby face is going to be one of the things they do. That might even be. They might even put the title on Jade. I don't think they will. I think she's probably not quite ready for that, but they put the title on Nyla Rose once, so they might. But I think that's definitely a pay-per-view match we're going to see. I also think Miro is going to lose the TNT title to Jungle Boy, and I don't think that's going to happen this year. I think it's
that's a good one. That's a good one.
And I think after that, he's immediately or very shortly thereafter going to move into a program against world champion Hangman Adam Page, and we're going to see Adam Page Miro as a pay-per-view match, maybe for Revolution or Double or Nothing next year.
Yeah, because Miro needs to always be in a title picture. I mean, he's just too good to not be, right?
It seems inevitable he has to be in a pay-per-view main event sooner rather than later. They're not going to do it while he's the TNT champion, but it's obvious for him to do that when he's not.
I mean, they're building him up with his matches, and like I said earlier, with the marketing too. I mean, they're really. I mean, he's all over the promotion right now.
So those are
not as much as Matt Hardy, but he's actually more in a public way. All over the promotion.
So those are some of my. Don't hit your TV again, or your iPad again, or it messes with the connection a little bit. But
I was wondering what happened there.
Those are some of my 2022 predictions. So let's see. I know we're coming up. We're just a little bit past the hour, but we've gone through most of the really cool stuff. I don't.
So what did you think of the Adam Page Dark Order segment?
I mean, this is it. This is the thing that we have been waiting for, that they've been
I'm a
building
little
towards
disappointed
for 2
because I was kind of
years.
like the way they were talking. I thought that match was going to happen tonight, like that night, like last
I
night.
never
I was
thought
like,
that was going to
I
happen.
was like,
They don't
oh,
ever do
an
that.
impromptu match, an elimination match.
They've
But I'm
never.
gonna-
I don't think they have ever done an impromptu match. They've always, every time they've had someone come out and say, "I want this match," say, "Okay," and then it happens. Usually, it happens the next week.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen the next week. I think it's going to happen after Fyter Fest is over, probably at Fight for the Fallen. But which
It's
will
gonna be a
back
good
in
one.
Daly's place,
Yeah.
but it'll be a good one. So, I mean, this is the thing. Adam Page has said he's definitively going for the AEW championship. He faced off against Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. The last time they had this kind of face off was Revolution last year, where Adam Page was really kind of the dick, and the Young Bucks were much more baby faces, and Kenny Omega was much more baby faces.
Yeah, which they brought up on the show.
And now they've completely flopped it around, where those guys are all giant dicks, and you feel entirely for Adam Page, and kind of understand the journey he has been on to get to this point where he is willing to face off with his against his old best friends, with his new friends, and claim both a title shot for the tag titles and a heavyweight championship for himself. That just means he has to get through a 5-man elimination match, 5-on-5, Hangman and the Dark Order versus the Elite. I'm wondering. I'm going to say, here's my prediction. It's not a 2022, but it's a prediction for that match. That match ends. A lot of people have been saying, well, Hangman can't beat Kenny Omega. They can't do that in an elimination match if they're going to build up. I'm like, no, they're not going to do that, because it's probably going to go New Japan rules, where they include over the top rope eliminations. They may not. They may require pin eliminations, but I suspect over the top rope. I think.
Yeah, I was thinking Survivor Series style or something like that.
So I think we'll see, because I don't think they've done an elimination match before. So either way, it's easier to do. I suggest the New Japan rules with over the top rope, because it's easier to protect the guys that you want to beat, that you don't want to beat yet, and when you're building to another match. That's why New Japan does it that way, because I suspect some Dark Order guys are going to sacrifice themselves to get Kenny Omega out, and it's actually going to come down to Adam Page and Matt Jackson, and he's going to knock Matt Jackson out to take it.
I hope Silver's back by then.
I hope. Well,
I missed him.
He's mostly back. He's just, I think, not cleared to wrestle yet, but he should be.
He's been on TV for the whole time. Basically.
I wouldn't be surprised if he's cleared to wrestle and they've been holding it back so that he can be in that match, because they know how over he will be in that match.
Right.
So
that's kind of the hope now. That's why it's probably a good thing then that they didn't have that match last night, because then you could wait to have Silver in it.
So you can also market that this starts the legitimate march to the main event for All Out, which I think everyone knows by this point is going to be Kenny Omega versus Hangman Adam Page for the AEW Championship.
Yeah, he basically said he's accepted, or that's going to be the match, right?
That's right. Well, they have to win this elimination match, but I don't think anybody thinks they're going to lose.
Are they going to go like to him like they did to Cassidy, and like give him like a contract to be like, you don't have to do this match. You're the beer. Forget about this match.
No, but they might get like the Good Brothers to try to track him down behind the scenes and attack him or something. But
who knows? Oh yeah, of course, that's a given. Yeah, that's what they do, right?
They'll do something underhanded.
Yeah,
but. No, I can't wait for that. I think this is going to make Adam Page as a main event. I could be wrong. I mean, we could end up seeing like the first half of 2022 could be some terrible pay-per-view buys for AEW, but I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, he came out, that entire arena was chanting cowboy shit. They have not forgot. A year and a half without fans, nobody has forgotten.
Yeah, and that was pretty much the first time that I was like, oh, Adam Page has something interesting, which he said more interesting things since then, but that was like his first big fiery promo in AEW. Really.
Yeah, where he really started to create himself as a character, because he hadn't really managed that before television started.
Hey, so here's something I want to ask you about 2022 prediction. How many title belts matches is Lance Archer going to lose in 2022? Because it seems like he's going to lose another one next week.
I'm going to say it. I know. I'm going to say at least 2, because he's the kind of guy that, like Miro, he's good to be in a pay-per-view main event, and I mean, let's be frank, like Hangman Page versus Lance Archer, pay-per-view main event for the AEW title is a pay-per-view worthy match. So I think I could see him being TNT champion. I don't think he's going to be the one to beat Jungle Boy, but you never know. I think actually probably next year we might start to get to the point where it is time for either as a tag team or as a TNT champion. It might be time for
Yeah, I mean, always a bright one. Right? That's the feeling you get with him.
Well, they've gone through everybody homemade that is logical. Like it's
like he's lost the title match. He's on a TNT title match. He's going to lose an IWGP title match.
For the second time, because Moxie's already beat him for that title once. He's the person Moxley beat to get that title. But it should be good. I mean,
in his home of Dallas, Texas. So that's
well, I was thinking
it's a man thing, like making you lose in your hometown.
It might be. I don't think it will, because I don't think New Japan is going to want him losing that belt on an AEW show. I think they want to save that for like an actual New Japan show. But when they said that, I was like, wow. He's technically from Hearn, not Dallas, but still a Dallas show. And it's an US Heavyweight Championship, so he could win it without it affecting like anything else happening in the AEW title scene if New Japan's willing to go for that. So for a second I was thinking, I wonder if they could do that. I wonder if they might go for the title switch. I don't know.
So it's like they have to do promos for like both promotions. Like that's kind of interesting. That like wow, that's really pulling double duty right there.
They really are. Well, it's the forbidden door. But on the same side, you have to think that for the most part, it doesn't matter so much whether you actually win the belt. What matters is that you're in the main event match, that you are considered someone that, you are enough of a draw that we're going to keep putting you in title matches.
You can put butts in seats, right? So there you go.
And so as long as they're putting him in title matches all the time, he is sitting pretty, and I don't think anybody's going to complain.
It's like high level jobbing. It's not just your low level jobbing. It's like jobbing to the stars. Which I'm pretty sure is an escort service somewhere in LA.
I have never heard of anybody complain about the payoff from being in the main event of a pay-per-view.
Right.
Which I'm sure he will at some point. He has to. So we also had, but I'm looking forward to that. Their Tokyo Dome match from 2 years ago was great. So this should be really good. And I expect that the Dallas crowd will be really hot for that. So question, does that main event in Dallas or does that open Dallas? Because Moxley opened this week. Does he open next week or is he main event?
No, I don't think they put that belt as a main event on the AEW show. I just get the feeling that's just something that doesn't happen.
I don't think they ever have. I think it's always been as an opener. I mean, they have done like a quote unquote New Japan thing as a main event. They did that New Japan tag match with that was Moxley and Archer together against Kenny and Kenta. As build up to a US heavyweight title match, but that was a main event, but there was like no title in line. It was just
I guess for the tag scene, what they're going to do now is they're going to work through the Dark Order. That's who's going to fight, because I think what's going to happen is that they're going to win that elimination match and then they get the title shot against the Young Bucks.
I expect so.
Yeah.
Or the Dark Order, because the Dark Order, especially talking about Evil Uno and Stu Grayson, so those are a Young Bucks project. They're longtime friends of the Young Bucks.
Okay, that makes you feel good. I love Uno and Stu. I love them. I think they're awesome to watch.
The Young Bucks specifically brought them into AEW and specifically brought them in with that gimmick. Like the Dark Order was a brainchild.
They're Rancho Cucamonga project. Okay.
The Dark Order is an actual brainchild of the Young Bucks. So
okay. Yeah, they're there from the first show. So yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, from Double or Nothing. They were there from the first Double or Nothing. Nobody knew who they were, but they were there.
Yeah, exactly. There's more masks back then. All of them were masks.
Yeah. And they had all the guys in the gimp suits that were just there. The creepers that they gave up, which is good. They needed to give them up.
Yeah, and they're not in the cult anymore. So
I missed the time when Evil Uno used to sit on a throne of creepers, but I actually thought that was cool. But what can you do?
But there's like they're a nice frat. So there you go.
So here's
they're helping out Adam Page without even making him join.
That's true. So here's a question: if they do go through this and get a shot, do the Young Bucks put Dark Order over and make Dark Order tag team champs?
I think that's what happens.
I think so.
I honestly think because the way they set up the whole the eliminations, like the stipulation, it just really makes more sense for that to happen rather than Young Bucks to win and go, well, then that's it.
All out.
No, something else. Like, just to not take that thread. It would be like, I don't know, be like a wasted opportunity, you think.
So do you think at All Out, the Elite lose everything and they leave All Out, they leave All Out having lost all their gold and having to like reevaluate all their life choices?
I think that'd be a nice, it's almost like Dark Reign and then Golden Age or the Heroic Age stuff in comics, right? Like that type of thing. That's what I think that's the more interesting storyline, but I don't know if that's what we'll do.
Well, I don't either, because I can definitely see because it also makes a lot of sense for Adam Page to win one and Dark Order to lose the other, and you have it split. But then the question comes down to the same one we had at a Double or Nothing, like, well, who can beat the Young Bucks? What tag team is out there that is tops enough and over enough that they're going to take the Young Bucks place as tag team champs? Could be Dark.
Oh, well, I was hoping Mox and Eddie would become a thing again, but I'm not sure if
yeah.
they're ever going to go back to that.
Doesn't seem like it. It seems like that. I mean, like, seems like they'll be pals, but maybe not doing a tag team thing. But who knows?
Right? Yeah.
Maybe Dark Order loses.
Like help each other out. Somebody gets beat up, they'll save them, like that type of thing, but not actually being a tag match.
Yeah. Maybe Mox and maybe Dark Order loses, so Mox and Eddie come back for a rematch at Full Gear or something. I don't know. It depends on what they're doing with Moxley at the time. I mean, honestly, the only other people I can see that could possibly do it would be Death Triangle. But Death Triangle has lost to the Young Bucks twice. They can't do it with FTR, and Proud and Powerful is in the middle of a feud with FTR. So do you just
which we didn't mention? They did build that
right.
like a bit with the
right.
Tully segment where they're like, oh, I liked it. I liked the segment this week with them. It was
And
like,
they
oh, like
had,
they basically cemented them as being faces, honestly.
Yeah, very much so. And they also had a Jericho MJF match, just also to make sure the top or vignette also to keep the top stars on the show and remind us that's going as
because Jericho, I think, was actually, from what I heard, he was performing with Fozzy last night in Iowa.
Yeah,
so he wasn't even there.
That. But they made sure he was there, or at least a vignette was there, where he got beaten up by a chair by MJF and Sean Spears, and announced his first labor.
So that's next week, right?
Next week, Sean Spears in a chair match where he can't win the chair. So take it back. Actually, I suspect that will be the main event. Because like the only other thing I could think of as a possibility is the Britt Baker Nyla Rose title match, but I'm not sure they will do a women's title match main event.
I could see them doing it. Yeah, I couldn't say. I don't know. I would think it would have to be.
I think you can make a strong argument for it, but that doesn't mean they will do it. I mean, Britt Baker is really over, but I don't know if they'll do it. Which brings us almost to the main event here. We'll go real quick through the women's match. Yuka Sakazaki returned to AEW Dynamite television. She's here for like a month, so like 4 episodes, and enough to get them into Rampage. She got a giant pop when she came out. People loved that music, and people remembered, even though she hasn't been around. She hasn't been on AEW anything since the women's tournament title tournament eliminator from the beginning of the year, and she was in Japan for all of that. So you had to watch her on the YouTube shows to see any of her matches. But
it's just very confusing when you dress like Sabu and you're not bloody at all.
Nobody else is thinking Sabu. Everybody else is thinking Manic Pixie Dream Girl. I mean, it's not. Sabu never had a finishing move called the Magic Girl Splash. Okay, it just never happened.
No, he just ripped you open with something. That's it.
But I thought she had a really good match with Penelope Ford, who just keeps looking better each time. You know, I was talking about how it seemed like they were building her up to give her more TV time as a TV female heel, because they need more women heels, and that's exactly what they did here, because they didn't want Jade to lose and they didn't want Britt to lose, and they didn't want Nyla to lose, so this is the perfect spot for Penelope.
Oh yeah, so you got to
really well.
There you go. At least you built her up a little bit, right?
And you built her up, and she got a really good match. Her matches are getting better.
More matches than Kip's doing, so there you go.
Kip's apparently like still recuperating from whatever, and I'm not sure
what Ramiro did
he was getting surgery on, but well, apparently his arm, he had to have surgery on like his arm or his shoulder or something, but I'm not sure exactly what it was, but it sounds like he's still laid up. But you know what? She can do just as fine on her own. She doesn't need Kip. She can do just fine on her own. And
she doesn't need Joey. She doesn't need Kip. She don't need nobody.
She don't need nobody. She came out.
She's not frustrated.
She's not. God, that's the dumbest tagline on earth. I really started to hate that whole.
I have to say it because he wasn't on TV this week. So
nobody has to say it. Nobody.
There's a vacuum.
No, there is no vacuum. There is no vacuum. There is nothing. I don't want to hear that. But then that brought us into our main event, our other big payoff that they had been building for months and months and months. Darby Allin. I mean, this goes back to Revolution, because then they had like their first tag. No, that was against Brian Cage, but this must go back to just after Revolution, I guess, because there was like the Dynamite after Revolution where Darby Allin
where they threw him down the stairs.
Scorpio Sky, and that led to his team up with Ethan Page and throwing him down the stairs before Double or Nothing. So, I mean, it must be 6 months they've been working on this to one degree or another. And finally, you got a one-on-one match with Ethan Page and Darby Allin in a coffin match with no disqualifications.
Casket matches, and Darby has coffin matches
because he does the coffin drop.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, what's the difference between a vampire and a man with a sore throat at a narcoleptic convention?
This has to do with it's a coffin pun. It has to do with I don't know the punchline, but I can tell it obviously from the setup and the bones of this joke. It's a setup. It's a pun on the word coughing and coffin. So go for it.
One of them.
Did I ruin it?
One of them lies in a coffin, and the other coughs in a lion.
There you go. Okay. What kind of reaction do you want more? I can't give you anything more than what I'm giving you now on this.
That reaction is all I need. You know why?
Well, there you go. I hope you can sustain yourself on it. Yeah.
You know why? Because that's what I'm talking about.
See, there's not even any context for this. You just sound like you're making fun of Canadian people.
I know. I would never do such a thing because we've been going on for like an hour and a half, and my brain's starting to jelly. But
okay,
we'll go quick through the main event. They did everything in this. Maybe you could almost never have another Darby Allin match because I can't think of what else he can do. He started off.
This was so good. Yeah, I mean,
coffin drop with a steel plate on his back.
The plate on his back.
Yeah,
I was like, all right. I was very confused. I thought he had an operation or something and turned to a cyborg or something like that. But no.
Then he took it off. I'm like, man, you're losing your whole advantage. I bet he was wishing he wore it when he got ego edged onto the steel steps. And
that was pretty hardcore. And it's one of those things where I was wondering, like, because if it's through a table, then the table breaks, and that's a bigger visual, right? But then also, like, him having this happen, that's also a huge visual too, like, because that looked like it hurt.
Yeah, that looked like it really hurt. Like
anything you do with Darby looks like it hurt, right? So yeah.
The steps.
That's his thing.
That too. That's his thing. But like the steps,
you just bounce him like a basketball and throw him into.
And he wasn't the only one because he went to open the casket in the front of the coffin the first time, and Scorpio Sky comes jumping out to even the odds. So then Sting comes.
Well, it's better than him being on commentary because that's usually what their deal is. One of the other ones on commentary.
There was no way they were gonna have commentators. And this was such a crazy match. I almost did not notice anyone on commentary speaking. I forgot that.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
it felt like they were watching.
Spot, yeah.
Well, they had like the long period where Scorpio Sky goes fighting with Sting into the crowd, mainly so we're not spending a lot of time watching Ethan Page deconstruct the ring because he took the entire bottom rope off in order to get the steel steps into the ring, which is smart.
Oh, you know what? I was going to say something about that because, I'm in Doomsday Wrestling promotion in case a lot of people don't know, but we just started wrestling again and practicing again. So I had to set up the ring this past week. And setting up the ring, man, those ropes are not light. And so when he was unhooking that thing, I was like, look, I did what you did in reverse because I was actually putting it together. But then, when he took the hook apart and everything, I was like, these are very familiar. And these things are not like they're heavy. Everything because they're not even ropes, right? They're steel cables. Yeah.
It depends on what some people use cables. Some people use ropes. I hear people like ropes better, but they're like thick ropes. So it sort of depends on where who's.
Well, those look like steel cable accent on TV.
I don't know. It's wrapped in vinyl, so there's no way to tell. But yeah. So Sting and Scorpio go fight, and Scorpio got crotched like a couple of times while they were fighting down the crowd, just so that.
He got Sting crotched him on the barrier.
Yeah. And then Darby Allin and Ethan Page went fighting. It looked like at one point Darby Allin was going to do a coffin drop off of the entranceway into the lower bowl onto the concrete steps. And like even he's not that crazy, and he didn't. He just drops to get.
Well, he said that crazy. He says the craziness for the last spot.
No, that was after they took those hooks from the ropes and they fish hooked each other's mouths.
Yeah, that was a good visual.
But then he finally
got a big one.
Yeah, that got a big one. So then he finally did, in fact, get I'm trying to think. What was it? It was like a stunner off the ropes that he used to knock Page out and knock him into the coffin. But that was not enough because then and I was thinking in the match, I'm like, well, his finishing move is the coffin drop. So he should.
It's just poetic,
do a coffin drop onto the coffin at some point. Yeah. And sure enough, as soon as he gets him in that coffin, he maneuvers that thing into range, climbs up on the post and does a coffin drop from the post to the outside through the coffin. And the second thing I was thinking, and I've seen a lot of people like post this on Twitter, like that had to be an eternity for Ethan Page inside that coffin.
That's what I was thinking. Well, first of all, how long was he in that coffin to begin with? Second of all, when you have Ethan Page in there, and I was wondering, like, is somebody giving Ethan Page a signal, like, of when this is going to happen?
Well,
'Cause
the
you're sitting
coffin
there, you don't know
did
what's
move.
gonna happen,
The coffin
right?
did move, so I'm sure that he's like, all right. Like as soon as it started getting moved around, he started to tense.
Then that was like the
going,
signal for Darby to jump.
I know that this is okay. He's moving the coffin, so this is getting ready to happen. I'm going to tense up, but still, just in there, not knowing that somebody's getting ready to fall on you, but having no idea.
I mean, that's kind of
when.
freaky.
That
Good thing he's
had
not
to suck.
claustrophobic, I'm assuming, but yeah.
that took some balls to do that.
Yeah.
But this was a great main event.
Yeah, it was a very good Darby,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
it was
for
it
sure.
showcased what Darby matches are about, basically.
And he got a giant pop. He gets a giant pop.
he's
As soon
super
as people
over.
hear his music, he doesn't need he will move ratings on himself. And from what I understand, they did over 1 million people live on average for the show. And I'd be willing to bet anything that the largest viewing audience was in fact for the Darby match in the main event, which is not usual for most wrestling shows. It's usually the first match is the biggest viewing audience. So that will be interesting. But I don't know how they're going to top it. We got Fyter Fest Night 2 coming up a week.
And does the storyline go anywhere after this with Darby Allin? Like, that's done, right?
It seems like it should be done. It seems like that should be the bow on top, and everybody's moving on to different feuds. But
right,
we shall see.
Yeah. Yeah, so next week, so what do we have next week? We have the Britt Rose Nyla match. We have the Glavers of Jericho going on, which I'm like, the Greek myth nerd to me is like, is anyone gonna give him a red shirt, like a blood colored stained shirt? Because that's how Hercules died.
No. And there's the IWGP US title,
right?
Texas
Lance
Death
Archer
Match.
That's right, Texas Death Match.
Yeah. And
which
finally,
Mox brought up the Texas born and Texas bred line, which I was like, that's like everybody says that for their own state. It's not a Texas thing.
I've heard it a lot in Texas. Texans like to say that. And there's also going to be finally for all the people who've been desperate for it, an Orange Cassidy singles match, Orange Cassidy versus the Blade, picking up from the mixed tag match last week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that should be good, of course, because Blade's also very.
Oh, we forgot to mention. I know we just passed it, the Sammy Guevara Wheeler Yuta match, which was really good. Sammy came out to a hero's welcome.
Huge pop. Yeah.
A huge pop. My one gripe, and it has nothing to do with him, is that I've been listening to people talk about this match, and they were like, we got the huge pop, the hometown pop, and he had to win because it's his hometown. I'm going like, fuck you. It's not really in Austin.
Yeah.
Sammy Guevara is from Houston.
I still wonder
Austin is not
if he's going to get those cheers in Dallas, but getting cheers in Austin and Houston are friendly enough that would be like.
In Dallas, he probably still will, but his hometown is not Austin.
Right.
His hometown is Houston. Those are two very different cities.
Very different. It's a 2 hour, 3 hour drive from each other.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. But then again, I always think Los Angeles and San Diego are right next to each other, and they're not. So
you can.
Maybe I'm the asshole again.
It's about the same distance. You can get from San Diego to Los Angeles in under 4 hours. But you know what? And you can do in Houston, you can't do in Austin. Buy a house for less than $1 million.
That's true.
Oh,
there you go. And sweat. Yeah, you're gonna put a lot more in Houston than you can in Austin. So eat shit, Austin. You heard it here first.
That's another shirt.
Eat shit, Austin. Keep Austin weird and eat shit, Austin. No context necessary. I still think I would rather have an eat shit Dallas shirt than
that's coming later.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like I'm gonna actually do.
No, this was a great. I didn't even notice this. This episode just flew by. I didn't feel the time at all. All the promo segments, everything worked. Even the non-wrestling stuff was really good. I mean, there wasn't a single bad thing on here. Every match the matches were all from like fun to great.
Yes. I'm wondering if they're getting spoiled because the shows have been pretty high quality lately. Like, can we keep this up? I still think it's kind of like a creative jolt from like the touring thing. Yeah. But let's see.
They did the same thing.
The product's been the best it's been in a little bit.
They did the same thing last summer. I think they tend to build because they do the Fyter Fest and Fight for the Fallen TV shows as pay-per-view quality shows every summer, and they've said they're going to. So I think they build to that. So what you end up getting is basically Double or Nothing, Fyter Fest, All Out. You basically get like a summer full of pay-per-view quality shows smashed together within 3 months. So it gets.
They don't have to pay pay-per-view prices for it.
Yeah. Now they can't continue it on to the fall, which is the downside, but it gets really hot, and it's really hot right now, and it's got to be exacerbated by the fact that they've got live audiences everywhere, and thousands. It is. it's so weird watching Dynamite with an arena full of 5,000 people.
It's nice.
Not used to. It's nice.
It almost feels like you're
Used to
watching
it
like
at
an
all.
old highlight or something, right?
It does. I'm like, I know this is what it used to be like, but that was so long ago in the distant past. It's only a distant memory I can.
Yeah, I can't even remember the
strangely
last like
recall.
big stadium event I went to, like basketball game or concert or wrestling. It's been a while. I really cannot even remember. So yeah, you're right. It's gonna be such a big charge system, but a nice one. I love
Nice
it.
one.
I mean, the energy works. You think about when they do the impact shows, you don't have any audience. The audience is a huge difference.
Yeah. Oh, it's so totally different. But well, they'll have Impact. They'll have an audience this Saturday for Slammiversary.
Right, Slammiversary.
We'll see if Kenny Omega retains. I suspect he will. But
Yeah.
we're getting. It feels like we're getting to the culmination of the Belt Collector storyline as well, somewhere over the next couple of
Belt
months.
collector. Belt collector.
No one's ever gonna say that. I don't care how much he says he wants it.
You gotta try to get.
Gonna say it.
If Joey can get, I'm frustrated. Why can't he get on belt collector?
I'm frustrated. Sucks. It's never going to be on a t-shirt. Everybody sat on their hands when you tried to do it in front of a live audience. You know why? Because it's stupid.
I don't even like it, but I kind of want it to work just to see your reaction.
No.
Like I have no dog in this fight.
No.
I just want to watch the world burn.
I just want them to give up. They need to give that one up. All right. Yeah. Well, on that note, give up Joey Janela.
Right.
Frustrated.
Or just something new. Yeah,
this was a great week and a great episode of Dynamite. Let's keep it up and going strong through Rampage, which is coming up very quickly on us. And then All Out, lots of good stuff. Next week is Fight for the Fallen 2. Also from Texas, I'm expecting big things from that. They got big shoes to fill. So we will be here with All Elite Reviewing. We'll be here to tell you about every minute of it in a podcast that will take as long as watching every minute of it. And I will be here for that. And hopefully you will too. I am Josh Starnes.
And I'm Shamik Ghosh, and I'll let you know if whenever I see Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, or Christian Cage this weekend, if they kick me out of the convention hall or not. So
you got to bring us an autograph.
Well, or something. A restraining order, probably.
One or the other. I expect to see photo of that with photographic proof. And
you're going to bail me out, so yeah.
I got other co-hosts waiting in the ring. What are you talking
about?
Oh. See, now you'll think better about laughing at my puns. And,
I'm sorry you boot that.
Get better. And this has been All Elite Reviewing. Cue the music.